This is the Canon C50, and I have a feeling you're gonna like this camera, but I can already hear your thoughts. Where has Canon compromised? What could possibly be missing from this 7K full frame compact cinema camera? Because I have found a few things. Now, I will say I've only had this camera for 2 days. I literally met the Canon man in the parking lot of a McDonald's. He handed me a box and said, here you go. So I have slept all of 7 hours over the last 2 days. So if I look a little bit tired, that is because I am, but I'm also super excited about this camera and wanted to share as much as I know with you. So this video is not sponsored by Canon, but it does have a sponsor, which is Artlist, but more on them in a bit. So the Canon C50 is a cinema camera, primarily a video camera. It does also have a photo mode and is similar to the R5C. You can kind of think of it as a successor, but now more refined. And overall, the form factor, the handling of the camera feels very similar to the R5C or the R5 II. It is smaller than an R5C, and actually in some dimensions smaller than an R5 II. It's a little bit wider, but the grip feels the exact same. The depth of it, if you measure from like the back of the viewfinder on the R5 II to the front of the grip, is actually shorter, which means this camera will be able to fit in your camera bag in the same spot as a full frame mirrorless camera like the R5 II or the R6 II. But it is smaller than the C80, which I think is going to appeal to a lot of indie filmmakers, a lot of professional content creators, those of us who want something smaller, but want that cinema EOS, like that full video experience. And I know a lot of Sony users are probably curious about this camera. It is effectively a competitor to the FX3, but it's actually cheaper than the FX3. Now, I don't have the American pricing because I'm dealing with Canon Canada, but it is 800 Canadian dollars cheaper than the FX3, which is probably like $2 US. But throughout this video, I'll throw some log footage and some color graded footage from the C70 that is color graded with my LUTs that you can actually find on my website. All of my video LUTs are based on my Lightroom presets. So if you use my Lightroom presets and you want that same look for video, you can find those also linked down in the description. The camera also comes with a new accessory, which is this top handle, and it has a zoom rocker on it, which is super cool, which means any of the Canon power zooms you can optically zoom with the zoom rocker. You can also apply digital zoom up to 4 times with that zoom rocker. And the front of the camera has its own dedicated zoom rocker. So if you saw me cover the R50V, that smaller APS-C camera where that also has that kind of like rocker on the front, basically this is the same functionality. The handle adds audio ins and outs. So you've got XLR, actually there's no outs on it, it's just ins, 2 XLR inputs, and then a whole panel on the side so you can set your levels, line level or phantom voltage if you're like me and you're using something like the Rode NTG3, which requires phantom power. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we do have a new lens, the 85 f1.4 VCM. So you've seen me talk about these lenses in the past. The 35 is one that I own and I use quite frequently. This is going to be a hybrid lens. So the 85 is designed for something like the C50, but if you're a photo shooter and maybe the f1.2 85 is a little bit too expensive for you, or you don't need 1.2, or it's a little bit bulky, to me, I'll say this feels like it's half the size. I don't know if it's exactly half the size, but having also held both of them side by side, the 85 f1.4 feels really good. And I apologize in advance, I don't have a ton of photo samples. I have to give this back literally tomorrow. The Canon man is coming back and I have to hand everything back. So hopefully we'll get more time with the 85 in the future. But for now, if you're interested in this lens, I think it's definitely one worth checking out. And oh my gosh, look at the front element. The front element on 85mm lenses is always beautiful. I guess we should probably attach that to our C50. So Canon also changed the way that the 85 sounds. So listen to this. So that was the older 35 and this is the 85. So Canon took the floating element that's inside this lens and swapped it out for one that's less noisy. Kind of like how when I snap my fingers, I can take this Rode mic and turn it into a dead cat. Or I can take this image of a Corvette and change it to a Bugatti. But how did I do that? So Artlist, who is the sponsor of today's video, makes this possible. And you've heard me talk about them before, about their music, their sound effects, their stock footage, all those little things that you need to elevate your video. But they're adding new tools all of the time, including Google's newest VEO3 image generation that uses the nano banana model. Who even names these things? I have absolutely wild. But I wanna show you how this works. So over on Artlist, I go to AI image and video. And then I go to image and drop on my reference image of the camera. And then I can go find up to 2 more images. In this case, I grabbed this dead cat, drop it on, and then give it my text prompt. So I hit generate, and in a few seconds, it takes my image from this to this. And you might look at this and go like, when would I ever use this? Like, I'm just happy taking my photos and my images, and I'm done. So recently I saw a story from a product photographer, a food photographer, who shot this bowl of pasta, and everything about it was perfect. The image was great, except she wanted to change out the color of the bowl. So she found an image of that bowl online, and using the same tools that are now integrated to Artlist, was able to swap out the bowl. And so for her, normally she would have to maintain an entire inventory of assets, of bowls, of forks, of napkins, but now she can keep a much smaller inventory or even add things in that she wouldn't have been able to before. So you can think of this as a way to enhance your library of virtual assets. So for the best deal on Artlist and everything they have to offer, you can check out my exclusive link down in the description, which will also give you 2 months free off of any of their annual plans. So big thanks to Artlist for making this video possible and continuing to be a supporter of this channel and everything that I do. Now, back to the camera. But looking at the body design for the C50, we have that split photo video mode, so you can do photos in electronic shutter. The buttons that you're gonna get are very similar to what you get on a C80, but more compact. You can customize them, so I actually customized one of them to set up focus peaking and another to do false colors so that I can just like toggle that on and off really quick. But all the ins and outs on the side are what you'd expect. You've got a mic, a headphone jack, a full-size HDMI, timecode for those of us who need it. And on the other side, we've got 2 memory cards. So unlike the C80, which I believe has 2 SD cards, this has a CF Express B and a SD card. So it's kind of like what you have on the R5 II. Personally, I would have loved if they went with 2 CF Express Type B cards, because you are limited in some cases with some of the higher bit rate, like the RAW formats. You can't record those to the SD card. But you probably noticed that there are 2 quarter-20s on the top, and that's actually for the handle, but there are also 2 quarter-20s on the side if you want to mount optional accessories. The handle itself also has quarter-20s, so if you wanted to mount a monitor or if you wanted to put something else, you've got all that option up on top. And there's also a record button. I don't think I mentioned that, but if you're doing like low handheld recording, you can hit that button and start rolling the camera. The screen on the Canon C50 feels more like what you get on the R5 II as opposed to the C80, which has a slightly different design. The camera does take the same batteries as the R5 II, which are those LPE P6 batteries. And on those batteries, you can get 90 minutes of runtime. So the C50 uses an all new 7K sensor design. We haven't seen this sensor before. This is the first camera to use it. And just to read off my notes, it is a 32 megapixel design with 6,960 by 4,640 pixels. So that's your resolution in photo mode. And if you're doing raw video, it has dual base ISO. So you're dealing with 800, which is your first base ISO, and 6400. You can see in this log footage that I did in low light, as you roll up the various ISOs, it gets noisier, and then boom, you hit that second base ISO and it cleans up again. In all these clips that I'm showing you, the B-roll is shot in C-Log2. And a few notes about the dynamic range, because I know everyone's gonna wanna know this, but 15 plus stops in full frame. They say 16 stops in Super 35. I don't have a way to test this. I also don't have a way to test rolling shutter or the readout speed of the sensor. So I'll have to get back to you on that one. But I did do an image sharpness test, and you can actually see these examples are shot in the RAW LT codec. We're dealing with 7K with the C50 versus 8K on the R5 II. And I was kind of curious, which one's gonna look better, because typically we think more pixels, but when you do a side by side, I actually felt like the C50 was just like a hair sharper. But again, I need a little bit more time with the camera to know for sure. The difference between 7K and the 8K of the R5 II is only about 1200 pixels. So it's not a huge difference. You don't have to feel like, okay, do I choose between the R5 II? Do I choose between the C50? Because you're looking at resolution. I think the 7K sensor on the C50 is very capable. And one of the main advantages of this camera over its main competitor, which would be something like the FX3. So I've already mentioned that it does RAW, 7K RAW up to 30 frames per second, and 4K up to 120 frames per second. Now, I asked the Canon people if there was a crop in 120 frames, and they said yes, but I think that may have been a mistake, because when I did a side-by-side and put the camera into slow and fast mode and switched it to 120, I didn't see the crop change. So I'll have to get back to you on that as well, but you can check out spec pages, and the links for these product pages will be down in the description. So you get RAW HQ, RAW Standard, and RAW Lite. Those only go to a single memory card. You get H.265, so HEVC, HEVCS, AVC, and AVCS with options for 420 or 422 chroma subsampling. And much like my R5 II, when I turn it on, it tells me I have a 6-hour clip limit. Apparently the clip limit on the C50 is also 6 hours. Now I don't think that is like a dead recording limit, like it's not gonna overheat on you because it does have that massive fan, but that might just be a limitation of like the file sizes that this camera can actually write. So anamorphic D-squeeze and open gate. Yes, we have both. We get 1.3, 1.5, 1.8, and 2 times D-squeeze, which is awesome. And we get open gate. So you can combine those things, but do keep in mind that open gate is gonna use that full 7K sensor. So you can't do like a 4K open gate. You would have to be shooting 7K open gate. Another question about the handle that I know some of you will have is that it is 24-bit only. So there's no 32-bit float audio on the handle or in the camera. That's maybe one slight compromise. There's not really any camera brands doing that right now other than Lumix has some options. It's something I would have loved to have seen, but for me personally isn't a deal breaker. So who is the C50 for? I have a feeling a lot of the commentary will be, well, this is just Canon playing catch up to the FX3. But if you've held other Canon cameras and used them, the C50 feels more like a mini C80 than an FX3. And that's because everything is kind of in the flavor of how Canon would do it. And from my first impression is it feels more like a refinement of the R5C rather than Canon saying, okay, we now need to do what Sony's doing. With the C50, you're gonna get this because you want that 7K resolution. You want that Canon flavor of a compact cinema camera. Or maybe you've looked at the C80 and it feels like too big of a jump from something like your R5. Well, now this is less expensive than an R5 II. And if you are someone who just wants video and you want access to all of the cinema EOS features, open gate, anamorphic D-squeeze, continuous recording, raw video. I'll be honest, I probably won't use raw video just because of how big the files are, but 15 plus stops of dynamic range. But I will say all of the footage that I'm showing you in this video looks really good. Just doing static frames, I feel like I have a video beast superpower mini beast of a super cinema camera in my hands. It feels really good. So if you are a professional content creator or a YouTuber who does this full time, who needs a static cam, or you do wedding videos, or you're an indie filmmaker, I think this is going to appeal to a lot of creators, a lot of creatives who fall into those categories. Also, internal RAW. That is something we have on Canon that Sony doesn't. I don't think a lot of us are shooting in RAW, but it's nice to know you don't need to attach a monitor or an external recorder. So then what makes this camera less than perfect? What are those compromises? Well, a lot of them I've shared throughout the video. The fact that it's not triple base ISO, which sure, step up to a C80 if that's something that you need. The fact that there's no 32-bit audio, and something else we haven't talked about, which is IBIS. So this has digital image stabilization. Much like the C80, the sensor itself doesn't shift. Now that is something on my R5 II, which I'm recording now, I really like the fact that it has that sensor stabilization, but for cinema style shooting, you know, your ARRI, your big high-end cinema cameras don't have sensor shift image stabilization. So is it a compromise? You'll have to decide for yourself. Also, a slight letdown is that there are no internal NDs. So the R5C had no internal NDs. Canon's higher end cinema cameras do have internal NDs. The FX3 doesn't have internal NDs. When will we get internal NDs in a compact full frame cinema camera? So my first impression of the Canon EOS C50 7K full frame mini beast of a cinema camera is that I think I might actually be buying one. Lately, I've been looking for a camera that is a little bit more video centric than my R5 II, that I can also shoot C-Log 2, but isn't the size of a C80. And I really do think that this camera falls into that category. But let me know, is there anything else that Canon missed? Is there anything you wish the C50 had that it doesn't? Do you wanna see me shoot something with this camera? I literally have to go give it back. I think I can hear the Canon man ringing my doorbell right now. But if you wanna see me shoot more with this, let me know down in the comments so I can ask for Canon to send it back so I can borrow it and test it some more. And until the next one, grab your camera, get out, and go shoot photos.